Welcome to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics, the podcast that delves into the power of traditional cattle genetics and the ranchers bringing them back. We're returning to the tried and true practices that prioritize what truly works on the ranch. Each episode, we'll talk to ranchers who are rediscovering the methods that built strong, resilient, efficient, and fertile herds in the 1960s and 70s. These breeders are blending the best of the past with practical solutions for today's ranching world. Whether you're passionate about the future of ranching or curious about heritage genetics, this podcast is for you. Presented by Boss Sires. Tune in as we reconnect with the roots of the herd. Here's your host, Patrick Powers.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Sustainable Stock. Today we're joined by Arron Nerbas, a third-generation cattleman and part of the family behind Nerbas Bros Angus, a program built on grass, pressure, and purpose. Arron and his family have spent decades shaping cattle that prove themselves where it matters the most, on the land, not on paper. Rooted in durability, not dependency, their herd stands as proof that you don't have to chase trends or technology to build something that lasts. Today we'll dig into the journey behind Nerbas Bros, the philosophy that drives their cattle, and why staying true to the land and the herd might just be the future of our industry. Arron, thank you for making some time for us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, I find the best way to do this is we just dive right in. I was wondering if you could just give us a quick rundown on who you are, where you're from, and what you're about, Bubba.
Sure. Firstly, I'd like to say grass, pressure, and purpose. I really like that.
I thought you would.
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. I might use it.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm from central Canada, which is a long way from Texas.
Just a little way.
But, yeah, we're just straight north, a few days drive. So we're right in the middle of Canada. We're in the province of Manitoba, but we're right up against the Saskatchewan border. Actually, you could throw a stone from my house and hit the border. So, and we're about 3 hours north of the U.S. border. So that should give you kind of a good proximity of where we are. Okay. I guess we're on the northern end of the Great Plains, I suppose. So we kind of live in a kind of a mixed parkland type area. We've, as you go north, you run into more trees and parkland type environments, where it's less flat land, a little more rolling land with bluffs and trees, streams, and everything like that. We actually live close to a valley, and that valley is the Assiniboine River. That river actually flows through like Brandon, Portage, and Winnipeg, and actually eventually ends up in Churchill, Manitoba. So that's where we live. We have a cow-calf operation. It's Black Angus, although we do have a small little nucleus herd of Red Angus now that we're working on.
Okay.
And so we're a commercial cow-calf operation. We also have a feed stock herd or division where we have 75 cows, and that's kind of our genetic nucleus that we build from and within and propagate through our commercial herd. We also do a little bit of direct-to-consumer marketing of beef, and we've recently opened up a small store in our local hometown.
I definitely want to get into that with you because that is a unique situation there.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's our way of like just providing a local option to people, and it's kind of a nose-to-tail approach. We do whole animals. We try and be as creative as we can with all the cuts, and then they're all put through our store as frozen products.
Okay.
No fresh. It's not a traditional butcher shop, but maybe we can get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, I plan to.
Yeah, and so from our who else is involved here? It's myself and my brother are the primary partners now. My parents are still involved in the operation. My mom is the bookkeeper. My dad is still involved, kind of as needed, or whatever he wants to fit into his schedule.
That's good.
My parents live on the main yard still. My brother and me live on acreages. I'm 4 miles away. He's 1 mile away. So we kind of have our own little yard sites, per se.
That's great.
And yeah, that's kind of us.
That's cool. So it's still definitely a family operation through and through.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Well, you know, it's funny as you joked there just a second ago about just straight north. With taking on this podcast, I'm having to learn how to juggle time zones. And you and I are very unique in that. I guess we're so directly north and south of each other that we fall at the same time of day. There's no adjustment at
Yeah.
all. And that's been a little odd for me and you trying to get this worked out, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And do you guys do daylight savings times? Like, do you change your time?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do too.
It's tough on us. I know my wife loves it because she gets more daylight. But believe it or not, I kind of like coming home from work and the day's dark and you're done. You don't. She doesn't expect anything out of
Yeah,
me during that time of year. Now I get
yeah.
home and she's in the yard with the weed eater ready for me to go.
There's two camps on that. People that love daylight savings times and the people that just can't stand it. There's no in between there.
Yeah, I just wish we would pick one or the other at this point. Well,
Yeah.
diving in a little bit to your operation, I had the opportunity of speaking to you the other day when we were getting ready for this whole thing. And I was wondering if you could go a little further than our conversation was about how y'all felt the need to build your own seed stock. That y'all originally started as commercial
Yeah.
and have had to kind of build your own cattle to peel off and bring into your operation.
Sure. Yeah, that's been like a 20-year journey, I suppose. Like in the mid 2000s, like I returned home to the farm 2003. My brother was a few years earlier, and then we had BSE in Canada as kind of like a real crisis to the industry, and everything was just in turmoil. You know, there's lots of question marks about where's the industry going, what's the future for it, the profitability, and all of that. And so I guess the catalyst that, you know, we went in a different direction is we took a holistic management course. Me and my brother did, and then my parents did the next year. And then we just started thinking about ways to change. And I guess what provoked that was just, you know, we wanted to be more profitable. We didn't want to be, slaves to the farm. So we wanted to, you know, manage our human resources and you know, work lifestyle into there too. So, you know, you were happy doing what you were doing. And so we just started changing things a little bit. And with that, we made some changes to the type of animal that we wanted on our farm. And we had been buying bulls in, and we just weren't necessarily happy with what we were getting. So we just decided that, you know, why don't we try and make our own? And we had started a little tiny base herd of Black Angus purebred females. And it was kind of a 4-H project that they grew a little bit. And then we had a few more females. And then we just started buying AI semen and AIing these females ourselves to produce our own bulls. And then subsequently using those bulls on our commercial herd. And that kind of just snowballed over the years. And now we have about 75 registered cows. And then we sell some registered bulls as well. And we sell a lot of commercial bulls as well. And a lot of people might not be necessarily know what a commercial bull is, but it's basically a pure Angus bull, but it comes out of a commercial cow that's not registered. And those bulls, we could offer this, but we don't. They come from multi-sire breeding, and we could DNA all the calves to know who their sires are, but we don't offer any parentage on those and no data at all. So it's a departure from what people, you know, are used to buying bulls in today's modern world, but these bulls come with really no data, no registrations. They just come from a herd of good cows, and those cows are our EPDs. When people come, you know, they want a tour of our farm, we just show them our cows.
Yeah, I wanted to dive a little bit further into y'all's multi-bull operation in a little while, and we could speak in further depth about the benefits of it. But getting back to what y'all building y'all's own seed stock, from the other day, I just jotting down my notes. Y'all haven't introduced live cattle genetics since 1999, right? There's been no livestock brought in. It's all been AI work.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
so
pretty.
any new, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's pretty impressive to me that y'all are that devoted to it.
Yeah. I don't know if that was the entire intention when we started, to say that that's the way it's going to be and we don't ever want to buy a live bull.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it went, and we just were kind of happy with how we were sourcing those genetics. And so everything over the last 20 years that we brought into our herd has just been through frozen semen, through frozen genetics.
Okay. So when
And we haven't bought a female in or a male for over 20 years.
All right. So what do you feel the advantages of y'all becoming your own seed stock producer were?
Oh, well, we get the product that we want for one. We get a steady supply. There's also the financial aspect of it too. If we're raising our own bulls, there's a cost savings there versus going out and buying them. But I think more than anything, it's just knowing what we're getting and controlling that entire process.
Okay. And what do y'all push for and look for within y'all's art? I mean, I noted it in the intro, and I have a relationship with your operation just from my work with Boss Hires. But I know that y'all really look for real world conditions. I was hoping you could highlight what those are and what y'all reward through y'all's system.
Okay. Well, it's really uncomplicated. I'll put it that way. It's simple. Our breeding is very singular, and it's just our entire goal is to make better cows over time. So it's highly maternally focused. We're not focusing on extreme growth like a lot of seed stock producers are, because in today's world, I don't have to, tell you or anybody else. There's been a trend to larger animals and more growth, over the past 20 to 30 years. We kind of like buck that, so to speak, and we have moderate frame cattle, moderate growth, but the maternal aspect of it is what we're striving for. So that cow just needs to be a good mother. She needs to be a good cow. So anything you associate with that is what we want her to be good at. So that includes obviously fertility, getting a calf. That's number one. And then there's all the other things that go with it: calving, milking, nursing, being a good mother, being structurally sound, good feet, good udders, can travel well because we're moving our cattle constantly. They have to travel. So just structurally sound, and then hormonally balanced as well. So they shed off in time, and that all kind of wraps around fertility as well and getting bred. And then just, some phenotype parameters that we shoot for in terms of femininity in the females, masculinity in the males. Very, very important. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Like, it's just, it's very basic. We just want the cows to be good cows, like, first. I think the industry as a whole, when they chase single traits and other, we shouldn't be having these discussions about why do Angus have bad feet or bad udders. I mean, Angus, that's what they were known for in the beginning. How did we get away from that, right? So when you're single trait selecting, there's always a consequence, and other things go out of balance when you do that. So we just want a nice balanced cow that does it on her own.
So you're not chasing unicorns, you're breeding for the herd.
Exactly. That's exactly what we do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So it's not really about the individuals. Yeah, it's about the herd. And I've had this conversation with other people too. It's when you breed for the herd, the amazing or the super individuals are a side effect of that, and they just come. Right?
Yeah.
Instead of trying, it's quite something.
That's pretty cool. Rather than go for the one individual, if you bring them all up to snuff, you'll have standouts among that, and even those will be more moderate than other people rewarding on single traits.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. Yep. Okay, well, I've got a note here from the last time we spoke, and it's in regards to y'all's philosophy and your 4 ways you feel there is to change a herd. I was wondering if you could speak on those with me today.
Yeah. Well, for us, the genetics is the first component. For us, that's RAI sire selection. That's what we're bringing into our herd to change it or influence it over time. The second way is your selection of females and bulls. So that means how you are selecting your replacement females. For us, we are mainly doing it on phenotype. So we are putting our cow goggles on, as I like to say. So we're envisioning what that young female is going to look like as a cow. And that's basically our parameters. We also will skim off the top. Like, we don't want, there's an inclination to pick your biggest heifers every year. Well, if you keep doing that, you're going to have frame creep, and you're just going to end up with bigger and bigger cows. So we'll skim off the top, like the high the biggest heifers, and that's a good thing because they bring more at market too. But anyway, skim off the top, skim off the bottom, and then we select from that middle core, and that's our basis for female selection. And now, one other thing I'll add to the female selection is, like, it's and this has been discussed on the Bronzo page too, but if you really want to know what a female looks like, in air quotes, just go out to your herd and look at your oldest cows that have stayed in your system, right? And then that's how you want to envision those young females looking, because that's what's going to actually work within your system. And so anyway, the same thing applies to the bulls when we pick them. It's a lot on phenotype. However, we are using purebred or registered bulls. So we do take pedigree into consideration, and we want to have balanced genetic pools and different lines. So that's the other thing. So the third way to influence is then your management or your system pressure. So whatever your system is, and in our case, we really apply pressure. It's a non-pampered environment. So the ones that stay within that system and thrive, obviously you want to keep propagating those ones, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the fourth one is your culling protocol. So we have to be ruthless on culling. So anything, that comes up open, gone. Anything that has like structural issues, like with feet, udders as well, any long teeth or blown up bags, like you have to be ruthless on your culling. And then over time, if you apply those four things, your herd should dramatically improve over time. Now, when I say dramatically improve, I mean within the confines of your own individual system.
Yes, sir.
And what your cows look like that are successful in that system might not look like somebody else's, because you might have a different system, right?
Yeah. Well, and your culling process might be a little differently because you are so land and grass management focused that you're really viewing the relationship between the cattle and the land and applying that within your culling as well, where that little step gets missed in a lot of operations.
I would agree with that. Yeah. But for us, it's, obviously, a cow is the basis for a beef operation, but for us, we strip that down, and it's really, okay, what does a cow eat? She eats grass. Where does grass come from? The ground or the soil. Okay, what's happening in the soil? So for us, what's most important is the ecosystem and the health of the soil and the overall productivity. And in essence, what you want to do is grow the most grass or forage out of a single acre base, right? So that's mainly our focus, and it's through animal impact, rest and recovery, and grazing management. And you can really impact the amount of forage you grow on 1 acre by just by doing that. And a lot of people, I think it's known, but it's still scary how many acres are not managed that way and are just seasonal grazed, continuously grazed.
Yeah.
Even though everybody knows that if you manage your grass a little bit differently, you can grow a lot more grass.
Yeah. So, how much further do you think the importance of epigenetics plays into your ability to manage on pressure?
What do you mean by that exactly? Could you just clarify that?
Yeah. So, how much do you feel that you can take the next step? Do you feel like this culling process and rewarding along these trends truly utilizes the land in the best way?
Yeah, I'd say the epigenetic value or the improvement of your herd is kind of like the grass management as well, where you will improve and then you will plateau a little bit.
Okay.
It's not infinite, right?
Yes, sir.
So with our grass, we saw probably from the start when we were not grazing that way, probably I would say 2.5 times the amount of forage off the same acre base.
Really?
And I think with genetic improvement, it's the same. You will improve, and then you will probably hit a little peak and plateau, and it won't be infinite, right? I mean, I think it's just more like fine tuning after that.
A real world environment does not allow for the properties of exponential growth. You can't just keep doubling and doubling and doubling as you greater. I mean, genetics will only take you so far. Land management can only take you so far.
Right. Yeah. But you can still realize the benefit and keep fine tuning that system
Yes,
and
sir.
maintaining.
Yeah. Well, from speaking to you the other day, I think that all that rounds out really well with probably one of my favorite quotes from our conversation was, "A good cow is a cow that doesn't need me." I think that if more
Yeah.
ranchers would go about rearing their herd with that attitude, we could end up with some pretty good stuff out in this world.
Well, for us, that's what we want. We want the cow to express her cowiness on her own, right? Without us giving, like, it's amazing what a cow can do on her own, but we have to let her do that. If we keep, doing all the things for her, you build a reliant animal on the things that you're doing for her. So if at any point you wanted to pull that away, she's going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
But if you just remove the crutches off the start, and there will be, if people do that, there will be kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
I like this. I like this idea.
Period.
It's raising cattle and skipping the whole training wheels phase.
Yeah, pretty much. But when you pull those training wheels away, in a lot of cases, if you do it too abruptly, there will be consequences to that too, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you'll have more opens than you want. Maybe the condition won't be good on your cows. Over time, that will improve. But sometimes you can do that too abruptly, and then there's consequences for it, right?
Yeah.
But for us, we have a very simple system, and we like to let the cows just do everything on their own. We will intervene when we need to, but it's very, very rare. We calve on stockpile grass. We're not in a barn. There's not people around them constantly. Like, they're just very settled and content. And it's just, when we go, we just basically drive through them with the quad during calving and write down cows as they calve. Well, that's pretty much it. Look for trouble. I mean, there's orphan calves that happen. There's twins that get in a pasture calving system like ours. 90% of the time, if a cow has a twin, she will just pick one and move on and leave the other one behind. So we're watching for those. And if we have a twin, we can bring them home, and then we can bottle feed it and graft onto another cow, or we can sell it. There's different options, but looking for sick calves or any kind of possible predator problems as well. But that's about it.
Okay. Well, earlier you spoke for just a moment on y'all's use of multiple bulls and breeding cycle. And I first encountered that about 2 months ago. I got my hands on a Lassiter group meeting, a public forum he was part of. And him or another guest spoke about the use of that and the benefits very lightly. I'm very excited to speak with someone who's actively doing that. Could you speak on how that works and the benefits you feel y'all have gained from doing that, operating in that form?
Sure. There's a couple different benefits to that, and primarily, which isn't really necessarily cow related, is the ability to manage your grass properly. If you have, 5, 6, 7 different breeding herds with one bull, it doesn't give you the same ability to impact the land as a bigger herd would. So we like to run actually 2 bigger herds. So just say, for example, 250 cows in each herd. That herd size will allow you to do animal impact if and when you choose to, that you couldn't accomplish with a group of 50 cows. So that's very important to us. And the only way you could do that is by having a larger herd with a large number of bulls, right?
Yes, sir.
So there's that. I think multi-sire breeding also has a lot of benefits to just being a more natural system and the fertility, because you're allowing the more dominant bulls, the more fertile bulls, to breed more cows. And then ultimately over time, that should improve your genetic fertility within your herd.
Yeah.
And it works fine for, like, we do it with our commercial herd. We also actually multi-sire breed with our registered herd as well. We have a herd of 75 cows, and we could split that and have 2 different herds, 1 bull each, but we choose to put them together and have 2 bulls, sometimes 3, and then we just DNA test all of those calves before we register them, so we know who their sires are.
That's cool.
And it's interesting because with our purebred herd, we don't test our commercial herd to know who the dominant sires are. But in our purebred herd, every year there's one bull that will sire probably, like if you have 3 bulls breeding, you will have one bull that sires 50% or more of those calves.
Really? So it does just bring out the best.
Bull in that herd.
Brings out the competition in them, does it?
Yeah, it does.
That's wonderful. Well, and even so that's your commercial herd that you're checking the DNA on, correct? Or no, it's your...
No, that's the registered herd.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that was one of the benefits that was spoke on in that public forum I heard, was that they don't feel the need within their herd to test. They know that the best genetics are moving forward for next year's bull selection or for future bull selection. Why do you need to know who the daddy was? All you know was he was the best that season.
That's right. You don't.
That's wonderful.
And I would say, you really don't. And if you're just a commercial breeder, I don't think it matters. Like, what really matters is that epigenetic fertility effect is actually taking place.
Yeah.
And if you know that and understand it, what more do you need?
So I don't know if I've only experienced this in such a small amount just because how new I am to the cattle industry, but is this not common practice?
Multi-sire breeding?
Yes, sir.
No, not really. I would say not.
Okay. So would you say that it breaks any industry rules or is just uncommon?
I don't know if it breaks any industry rules. It's just uncommon because it's a paradigm that people think they need to have, single bulls breeding smaller herds. I don't really know why, other than the fact that kind of that's the industry norm and maybe an element of tradition in there. I'm not sure.
No, I really do appreciate you speaking on that. Please don't allow my lack of education to influence your way of thinking at all. I'm truly here just to question it all, man, and learn as much as I can.
Yeah.
Well, moving away from our multi-sire operation questions, I would love to hear about how Nerbas Bros is expanding and how y'all are currently collecting for export and how that came about and everything related to it.
Yeah, sure. So we have a bull that's in at Hawkeye Breeders in Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay.
And he's getting collected there, and he's still there. We're getting a few more straws, but not something we necessarily ever get into per se, or had any aspirations of doing. But about 4 years ago, we had a request from a breeder in the UK, and he was wondering if we had any semen available on bulls that we could send over to them. And so we just started the conversation. Ultimately, we found out that the UK, which falls under the EU rules for export, import regulations,
yes, sir,
is a very, very hard market to get bulls from North America over to the UK. Just a lot of restrictions on testing, and there's not a lot of bulls that actually get over there and are offered and have their semen available. So we tried a few bulls, and we just couldn't get the testing to work, that they could pass all the required testing. As stubborn as I am, I couldn't let it go. And we managed to basically have a cow and calf or a pair at a alternate ranch, not our own ranch. And then basically their herd was IBR, BVD vaccinated. And then if you don't vaccinate the calf, that calf has a higher probability of being negative on this particular IBR test that we couldn't get past. And so we did that. And then that calf ended up passing all those tests. We had to wait till he was 18 months of age and he was clear there. And then he could go on to get collected, which is what we did. And now he's 24 months just now. And we've got, I think, about 1,500 straws collected off him already. And we will have some semen that can go to the UK, and we'll be there in about a month's time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, a 4-year journey, but we finally got to where we want to be.
Yeah.
And we never thought that might happen. So that particular breeder in the UK, actually, we sent him some embryos because embryos are a little bit easier to do. And actually, he implanted those in the summer of 2024. Okay. And those first calves are hitting the ground now in the UK this spring. So that's pretty exciting.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, since getting on this journey, have y'all had any inquiries from elsewhere throughout the world?
We have. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, ones that I would have never thought would actually be, realistic. But obviously we've had some interest in Canada and the US, which is, the North American domestic market. But we've also had an inquiry from Botswana, which is in southern Africa.
Yeah.
We've had some inquiries from Romania, France. So just really, really interesting it's all through social media, right? That's basically how we market. And it's interesting that people will just contact me and say, I saw your post on Twitter, or X as it's known now, and then that you're exporting semen, and then they're asking questions and seeing if there's something that might work. So, it's interesting. Social media really has a lot of negative to it, but there's a lot of positive to it and how it can make, bring people together and make it kind of a small world in a way.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you brought up the Bondsman Facebook group earlier. I mean, that is such an empowering use of social media that people can come together and share like-minded ideas and principles that were laid down. Hell, how long ago was that? 60 years ago? And they're shaping the cattle industry today in a positive, impactful way.
Yeah. And across all breeds too. That's not just a breed specific page, right? It's those bonds and principles can apply throughout breeds as well. So that brings even more people in. I think that page has over 10,000 members now.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's one of the heaviest education sources I have right now. Is there and a couple other grass management pages that I'm a member of, and land management and holistic management. I've learned more there in the last 4 months than I have anywhere else.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource. And then also the individual connections that you make on Bondsman page.
Yes, sir.
And then there's side conversations that start after that. Also very invaluable.
I think that's one of the things I value most about this sector of the cattle industry is that there's no shying away from thought being provoked. And there definitely is a wrong way, but there's a lot of encouragement for the idea or concept of multiple right ways. And the right way is individually fit to your environment, to your cattle type, and there's a lot of encouragement found among these groups of producers. And I think that's what I've enjoyed the most. I mean, it's very welcoming. I mean, look at me and you speaking right now. How would you and I have connected before? I mean,
I know. I
raised mini cows on 10 acres. And you and I are having a conversation right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, along those
I'll just maybe just interject there for a minute, because that's kind of how I came to be involved with Boss Sires and have a relationship with Grant Vassberg. Is I listened to him on the Working Cows podcast about Boss Sires and what he was trying to accomplish, and then I just reached out to him and asked him for some more information on what he was doing, and I thought the timing might be right, considering what we were doing with getting a bull collected and then trying to market that semen a little, globally or outside what we would normally try to do.
Yes, sir.
And then, we got talking, and we were, very much on the same page, like from a cattle philosophy standpoint. And the next thing you know, here we are. So it seemed to all work out pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think that is a great point to move. How do you feel like y'all's principles and philosophies align with Boss Sires?
Oh, very much so, I would say. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Boss Sires' mission or objective is really to provide an alternative source of genetics for people that, maybe, haven't seen or because there are alternate genetics out there, but they're just maybe not well known, and they don't get put in the ABS catalog or any of those, and they don't go to, Agribition here or Denver in the U.S., but they don't show cattle. And so it's a way for smaller breeders or lesser known to get exposure. And I think the core values of Boss Sires is really just making cattle great again, really. You know what I mean? Like a cow being a cow, and which is really what our philosophy is, right?
Absolutely. Well, and the problem is too, it's I would say it's not making them great again. It's just finding the ones that have been left great, unmolested, and finally rewarding them. If there was one thing we were to highlight, it's that our biggest desire is to change the incentive structure. And I feel like this podcast and others like it are just tools of that. We need to create outlets for these uncelebrated producers like yourself that are doing the right thing, are set in strong moral values, and feel they owe something greater to the industry as a whole. It's time for y'all to have an opportunity to have your voice heard, have your cattle recognized for what they are. I mean, one of the great problems is, you have somebody who's raising grass-fed genetics, and they follow these grazing management systems, and they have wonderful principles. And within 2 generations, the cattle they're producing, their customers are producing, are just falling in the same auction block. And they're undervalued because they're not black cows. And it's because there hasn't been an incentive structure created that rewards these type of genetics, that recognizes how independent and valuable they are. Because it looks just like another cow, but people don't realize that this cow has the capability of truly doing what a cow's job has always intentionally, naturally been. And that's all we're really doing, is highlighting that. My entire goal of speaking with you today is to help promote and understand, did you walk out of a time capsule with your cattle? Or did you have to hunt them out, build them, and recognize them for what they were?
Yeah. The latter.
I'm sure that was a little long-winded, and I do apologize, but
no,
it honestly feels that way.
No, and I like the approach that Grant's taking with a truly global perspective too. I think I think on a smaller scale, some of these genetic options have been tried, but not on a global scale. And I think he's tying people together from different countries and with the same, objectives and mindsets. And I really hope it takes off.
Yes, sir.
I think it's really, really needed.
Well, I mean, I think this would be a beautiful point to speak on the fact that you are a representative for Boss Sires there in Canada. What do you hope to achieve by joining at that level? I mean, you're not only a breeder with Boss Sires, which is beautiful by itself, but you're also a rep. Could you tell us why you joined at that level and what you hope to achieve?
Well, I guess because Grant convinced me to do it would be the primary reason. But I could have said no, but there are other breeders in Canada that are doing what we're doing too. Like it's not just us, and there are other lesser known. But it's funny, we talked about that because I think there's a few in Western Canada like us that aren't necessarily on in the semen and embryo market, but just in this last year, they've had amazing sales results, and the demand for that type of product is growing. We can see that for a more basic kind of maternal-based cow. However they're using those bulls, right?
Yeah.
And so I think part of what a representative's job is to not only be a producer, but also to see what other genetic options are there in the country that you reside in, and how can some of those other genetic providers and take away your competitor hat, right, and just see who's out there and who might complement the current lineup, so we all move forward and we all benefit together.
You highlighted that very well with the remove the competitor hat. I mean, I think that's another area in which this type of producer shines, is we can recognize that not every cow will fit every environment. So if I have someone that's a little bit different, but local to me, I mean, I live in Texas. There are cattle within a 2-hour drive of me that would not suit my property at all. And that same truth probably lays bare for you as well. But you can recognize the value of that cow, and you can recognize that it isn't being represented well in the marketplace, even though it has achieved something great. And so has that producer by preserving it. And you want to highlight and celebrate that. I think that's beautiful, Arron.
Thanks. Well, I really hope this there, not only for, my individual success within that, but I mean, I really hope Boss Sires as a global entity can gain momentum and really take off.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see.
Well, the final toot on our horn I'll do for that is the fact that we didn't plan on launching globally this quickly. It was called for. Just because, I mean, Grant just finished a trip to the Philippines, and I try not to single him out as much because this is a group movement as a whole. It's a group effort with all of our breeders, reps, and distributors. But, some of them are more well-traveled than others. And you'll go to parts of the world. He just returned from the Philippines. And if there isn't someone of our mindset there to speak about cattle in the manner we do and the job they have, not the job we have as producers to support the cattle with inputs and other crutches, but the job of a cow and its ability to achieve that on its own. If there's not a voice like ours there, what is represented? And it's the same stuff over and over and over. And another thing you'll notice is as soon as they bring in those genetics within a 2 to 3 year window, they're also importing an infrastructure of support, be grain, foodstuffs, because they have to feed a cow that's unsuited for its environment at a far heavier level to try and bring about fertility or just to increase their beef market. And they don't realize the cost that follows that.
Yeah.
But that's where I'll finish that off.
Yeah, I will say that I think, even though we all think change is needed and required, I think the input side of it and the cost of production, we've seen what's happened in the last 5 years. Everybody has globally, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's not just agriculture production; it's inputs into everything. I think there's going to be some real hard looks that are needed to be given in the cattle industry if we want it to survive, because inputs are not going to get any cheaper, and anytime those inputs keep going up, that just that reduces your profitability.
Yes, sir.
And the people are going to have to look at alternative ways of doing things and alternative ways or genetic lines to use.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel that is one of my purposes of this show is that we not only want to highlight the reward structure and the shift that needs to come about, but we also want to help define what an input is for a producer. And there are buzzwords for that, and we're just as guilty of using them. It's far simpler to say input, crutch. You and I made up a new one earlier when we said training wheels. But the moment we can actually define those as your time, additional grain costs, additional vet care, the building of additional structures because you have cattle that aren't heat tolerant or these other things, those are all costly inputs. And you cannot account for the rate at which those prices inflate and how much it can take away from the bottom line of your cattle operation.
Yep.
Well, moving on. Sorry. That's a rabbit hole I feel like you and I both could stay down all day.
Yeah, we better move on.
We should. I mean, we're running out of time, Bubba. Well, I'm very interested to hear about y'all's direct-to-consumer beef operation. Y'all have definitely taken a very unique approach to it, and I'm going to shut up for a little while, and I want you to just run with it because it is different.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So we've been playing around in the direct-to-consumer market for, I would say, 5-6 years. So we had some strategic partnerships with some people that live in more urban areas because we're 4 hours away from that market. So logistically, it's hard. So what we've been doing is selling live animals to these partners, and then they will actually have their own customer base and sell directly to those customers. We've also been doing some direct to consumer ourselves, and all of this kind of spurred on a bit more of a local approach, because over the years we've talked about selling locally. Now, when I say locally, I mean like locally here, like our own community. And, you know, there's some things that are inhibitive to, you know, we didn't really want to have a full butcher shop. The rules and regulations for processing are quite strict in Manitoba, and we weren't prepared to make the investment into an abattoir and a processing facility. So we just decided to keep working with our existing processor, and that we'd set up a bit of a retail shop in Russell. But the unique idea that we had was to make it a self-serve automated butcher shop. So in essence, the customer could just come in themselves and buy product out of a vending machine. And it's basically a freezer that has a point of sale and the capability of taking electronic payments. And you basically use your credit card or your debit card and buy frozen product out of a vending machine. And the advantage to that is you can buy individual cuts. Like you can come in and just buy 1 pound of hamburger if you want.
Well, Arron, I feel like that's pretty brilliant. I mean, y'all not only created a new, unique direct-to-consumer opportunity there with the individual cuts, but you also created an opportunity for cost savings without having it staffed. And I would imagine that y'all are not only benefiting from that, but y'all have passed that cost savings along to the consumer as well, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to not have it staffed, you definitely have some savings there, not only on what you're paying them, but the logistics of managing staff as well. We actually do have some small staffed hours because we realized early on that maybe not every customer wants to buy in that manner. And also just from an exposure standpoint for the business, and then inviting customers to actually meet us and know who we are. So we are open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, but only 2 hours. So from 3:30 to 5:30. So you're kind of getting that after work crowd on those 3 days. So that's when we're there. So we are staffed 6 hours a week.
That's very manageable, and it still allows you to have a face for the public. I think that's wonderful. I'm sure you probably do have a very strong relationship with your customer base as well, don't you?
Well, we're trying to, for sure. Yeah, and as far as like cost savings to the customer and how we price, we try and be as fair as possible. It's a grass-fed, grass-finished product, and it does take longer to get to market than a traditional grain-based feedlot finished animal. And then, the economies of scale too, when you're smaller retail, like we have to pay, the processing costs are pretty high per animal, way higher than Cargill or some bigger company, which is the product that you're buying at the local grocery store. And I think that's a misconception a lot of people have, that we're cutting out the middleman, so our product should be cheaper. But in actuality, our costs are actually more, because on an individual basis, it does cost us a lot more per animal to get them processed. But we try and be as fair as possible, and our prices are currently at about 10% higher than the local alternative in town. So we are a premium, but it's very small.
Yeah, negligible.
Yeah.
Well, Arron, I do think that's great that we were able to cover your operation in direct-to-consumer beef. And I know that y'all are primarily a cow-calf producer, and y'all have also experienced the benefits of creating your own seed stock herd. But I don't want to make the common mistake that many producers do and lose the fact that I am speaking to an individual beyond the family property and behind the family operation. I was wondering if you could tell me who you are and maybe some of your interests.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's important to have an identity outside your farm. I think too many farmers get so wrapped up in the farm as their business that is their own identity, and they don't have a personal identity outside of that. And I think it's not always healthy, and I think you need to have some separation from your farm. And in saying that, it can be any business. It doesn't need to be a farm too, right? I mean, if you have a a shoe store, right? You shouldn't be thinking about shoes 24 hours a day, right? You need some separation there, and I think it's a healthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think more people need to do that personally. But who am I? I guess I never necessarily wanted to be a rancher or a farmer when I was younger. I obviously had an interest in it and enjoyed, farm life, nature, just being outside working. When I graduated high school, I left not knowing what I wanted to do or where I'd end up. I took a year break and I went on an agriculture exchange program as a trainee. I worked in Germany for 7 months on a dairy. Just stayed with a family there. It's the hosting platform. They set you up with a family and they took care of all the details. And then when your term was over, you went back home. I decided to travel Europe with another Canadian, and we traveled Europe for, I think, close to 2 months, just backpacking and staying in hostels, riding the train around, getting to see other, cultures, history, the architecture, all that stuff in Europe is so deep. And then when I came back, I took an agriculture degree at U of M, University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. And then after I graduated from there, I just took some jobs in the industry with some seed companies and a few other things. And wasn't sure kind of if that's what I wanted to do as a career. And then I ended up taking another year off, and I went and traveled in Australia with my wife, girlfriend at the time. And we spent almost 12 months away. We were in Australia for 10 months and in New Zealand for, I think, 5 weeks. And it was a working holiday, though. We didn't go with much money. And because we were part of the British Commonwealth, it allows you to, there's kind of a reciprocal arrangement where like Australians can come to Canada and Canadians can go to Australia. But you can only work for 3 months at a time for any particular employee or employer, because they just don't want you necessarily coming over and staying with that employer long term unless you go through the actual channels of immigrating to that country.
That's cool.
So yeah, we worked on a lot of different things. We grain harvested, we picked oranges, we chipped cotton, which is actually chipping, like hoeing weeds out of cotton rows manually.
Really?
Yeah, really. I don't recommend that. It was hard work and it was really, really hot. We worked on some cattle stations up in the north of Australia, which was a really cool experience. Yeah, and then so when I got back home from, again, I worked for about 2 years in the industry, and then just there was an opportunity to go home, and I took some contract work at home and worked on the side a little bit, and then just decided to get into the farm, and that's kind of how that all worked out. So outside of the history of that, I remember is a school teacher, and she's now the principal of a small school here. My 2 daughters are Emerson and Haley. They're 16 and 13. And yeah, we're going to be empty nesters fairly soon.
Wow.
It's scary. Yeah. And we enjoy traveling as a family. We recently went to Costa Rica for a week. And we really enjoy doing things like that. And yeah, I'm also, one of my passions is flying. I'm a private pilot, so I just do it for fun. It's not a professional thing or anything. I never got my commercial license, but that's something that I like to do as a, bit of a fun thing.
That's cool.
And yeah, enjoy being outdoors, snowboarding. Those are winter activities in Canada. We used to play hockey, but, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to, right? You have to, right?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, it's our national pastime.
That's funny. Really is. Well, I'm glad that you had the opportunity in your life to kind of figure out who you were before you figured out what you were. I mean, I'm 33 years old, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
That's not a bad thing, though, is it?
No, I don't think so. I think it keeps us on our toes and keeps us ever questioning and seeking new knowledge. And I think that's one of the funnest parts of life. The moment you quit questioning and seeking new knowledge, it's time to go ahead and just roll over and die.
Yeah. All part of the journey, right?
Yes, sir. Well, I think we're kind of getting closer to the end of this thing, so I'm sure you've listened to a couple of other podcasts, and you might know what's coming, but I've got to ask it. Arron, in your view, what is the moral obligation of the cattlemen of the land, the industry, and future generations?
Good question. Very good question. And I've heard some others in previous podcasts answer this, and my answer is just going to be my answer. I don't think I'll speak for the industry as a whole necessarily, although there'll be some carryover. But I think the moral obligation of cattlemen is, I guess, the sustainability piece, and the sustainability piece, there's a lot of factors there. I mean, obviously, most farms are family operations. So to give the next generation a chance or a possibility to continue it if they choose to do so, in order to do that, the business has to be profitable. It has to be enjoyable. No kids are going to want to come into it if those two things don't exist. So I think that in itself is, we need to give that next generation the opportunity. And then I think from, there's a couple other standpoints. That's the human side of it. But I think, from the land side of it, on our operation, we want to, keep improving our land base and make it better than it ever has been. And so the next generation has that, I guess, strong foundation to build with from a land health, soil health, and land productivity standpoint. And then the genetics or the livestock side of it, we just want to make sure that we've been true to, to our genetic mission, I suppose, and talk the talk, but also walk the walk. So, what we say we're doing, what we say we're producing, what we say our genetics will do, they actually will. And that the next generation that takes it over has that strong foundation to build on.
That's wonderful. You're right. There's no wrong way to answer that. But I do think it's great that how rounded this conversation of ours has been. My final question for you there, your big one, it really felt like we were going back to our beginning whenever you said that your family kind of paused for a minute and stopped and looked at y'all's relationship with the land and the cattle and needed to make that where your time was the best spent and it was enjoyable because y'all realized y'all were going to be doing this for a living for generations. I think it's beautiful that those two tied together, and y'all have really made that positive impact in that direction. Well, Bubba, if there is a takeaway to be had from this conversation today, what would you hope that the listener walks away with?
Just that, I guess boss sires is an alternative in the marketplace, and people really should take a hard look at it and see what they can offer, genetically through frozen semen and embryos. Also, that there are different ways of doing things, and I think, in my own personal opinion, that sometimes the cattle industry gets too stuck in a rut and tradition and doesn't question why they're doing things. And I think for us, we've, some people might view it as a step back, but I think we've acknowledged, what cattle production was a long time ago, and a lot of the, the efficiencies that came with that.
Yes, sir.
And now we're mixing those traditional efficiencies with technology and a different way of doing things. And I think people need to broaden their horizons and not just do things because that's the way their parents did it, or that's because of the way the industry is telling them to do it. You need to do what's best for yourself, first and foremost.
Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Arron, I do appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story and your family's perspective of working with the land and cattle.
No problem. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I really hope that people hear this and remember that the real change doesn't come from chasing numbers or trends. It comes from choosing cattle and a way of ranching that's built to stand the test of time.
Well said. I agree.
Well, to the listeners, thank y'all for joining us today, and please check out Arron's links in the podcast description below. And as always, remember to
ranch with purpose, breed for the future.
Thank you for tuning in to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share. Join us next time as we continue exploring the legacy and future of cattle ranching. For more information, visit us at bosssires.com. That's BOSSIRES.com. Or connect with us on Facebook. Until then, stay rooted in common sense and connected to the herd.